Hi, this is a tutorial on how to load test your application using the open source tool called Locust. This is their official website, and this is how you write your test on Python. If you're using a Python environment, you can easily install it by using pip install locust. But in this case, we will use Docker, and we go ahead to the documentation here. We will find the page where it says running in Docker. And here we will need the config file for the Docker Compose file. This is it. We go ahead and copy it, and then we will create a new folder for our test, call it Locust. Go in the Locust folder, we have nothing there, and now we will create the Docker Compose file. We paste here, and as you can see here we have two services. One is the master and one is the worker. They are connected to each other, defined in this Docker file. We save this, close it, and now we have this Docker Compose file inside this folder, and we will need the Locust test file, which we can get in the get it started at. Copy the file or the code, and then go ahead and create a new file called locust file.py. Here we paste, and we will go and delete the last line. We will keep it simple and just do the first page only. Save it, exit. Now as you can see we have two files, Locust file and Docker Compose file. Now if we go into Docker PS, we have no containers running. Make sure that you have Docker already running. Now we just simply go write this command docker compose up -d, which means in daemon mode. This will install and download the Locust image, which will take a while, but we are going to skip this step so that you don't have to wait for it. And here we go. It created the two containers. If we do docker ps, now we have two containers running. One is the master container and one is the worker container. The port number 8089 is important because this is how we can get to the user interface. And we go to localhost 8089. We're going to do a new test where we use the same URL of this user interface for testing purposes, and we're going to choose the number of users 100 and the spawn rate of 10, which means every second 10 new users will be added until it reaches the maximum number of 100. The test has started on master 8089. The master is an alias for localhost or the container running the master node. And as you can see, there are 293, 291 requests per second. This is the charts view of it. And here we can see three different charts which show us the total number of requests, the response times, and the number of users in real time. In this test, because we use relatively small number of users, it is steady, so it means that the response time is good enough and our test is successful for now. We have 100 users currently in, and the response time is around 430 milliseconds, and we have around 250 requests per second. So that RPS means requests per second. If we go to the failures tab here, we will not see any failures because the load is very small to do any. We don't have any exceptions. This is the original or the initial test that we defined, which goes to the root URL. This is the download data where you can download the reports, and this is our worker which shows the CPU usage and the memory usage, which is important when you run bigger load tests, because this depends on the servers that will run the test. We'll go ahead and stop this, and we can start a new test with the same config, but this time we will use the famous google.com URL. Then we click on start swarming, and the test will continue where it left off for the charts part, and in statistics it starts anew. So we go into charts, you will see it. The chart itself resumes where it stopped earlier, and you will be able to see almost the same results as earlier, because this is again a fairly low amount of number of users load testing this website, in this case Google. You can also integrate this load testing in your CI/CD integration, and to do that we go to running without the web UI, and you will see the documentation here, and we can find the command to run Locust, which is this one. We select it, copy, and then we go in our terminal, getting the master container by using docker exec -it, which means docker execute interactively with the container ID, and write bash in the end, or bash. Then we will go to the mount directory, and if you remember from the config earlier, this is where the files reside at. Now let's go ahead and go to the running without the web UI page. You can see we copy this command here, which we can use to run the test headlessly. We will use 100 users and the respawn rate of 10. Now the file itself is called Locust file in our example, so we'll delete this and write Locust file. As you can see, the line above. Click enter, and this is complaining of missing parameter, which is the host one. As you can see, it has no requests going in, no failures, etc. We stop this and we write --host space https google.com, and the test is started. As you can see here, we can see the request going in, the failures, the average response time, etc. But Google knows that we are incorrectly accessing Google, so we get these failures, which is a good example to see how the failures look like in our application. In this example, we get the error back, and the message says too many requests. Now let's exit out of this container, and let's start a new test. In the user interface, again with Google, to see how the failures look like in the user interface or the web interface. Stop it, go into charts, we'll see the test resumed. Here we have 100% failures in the first chart, and this is how the failures look like if you would get them in your application. If you go to the documentation itself, you will find a lot of information and examples on how to write different test steps. You can have authentication as well when the requests are sent, just like here. And you can read the documentation to find all these methods that can be used in the test. Now, after finishing the test, we can shut down the containers. We go ahead and write docker compose stop, which is stopping our containers. If you write docker ps, you will see there's nothing there. This is everything. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.